Welcome, Izzy, to the FDS podcast. Welcome back.
Hi, thank you for having me.
We're in New York today. You
Yes,
just
we
came
are.
from Providence, Rhode Island. We initially did an episode like 2022 when FTS just started, and I'm really excited to do this like follow up because I feel like now we're both in very different places in our life, and I'm
Yes.
excited to start talking about that. And I also kind of feel like I didn't do your I mean I did your interview in 2022 in the best of my ability at the time,
Seeing the way that you have been able to grow off of what was, this will just be a really awesome transition. I like seeing the come up story, you know?
yeah, no, I appreciate that. But yeah, so I'm excited for this. So, and I also generally don't even remember like what we touched on before, but I kind of do want to pick up from like that point where we kind of met in LA. We met in like sober living. We were in the same like we were living in the same house. We didn't talk like too much, but we got along very well.
Yes.
And so I kind of like want to pick up from there and to kind of like the present. So you said on the way here, you were talking about how in 2022, that was your first time going to treatment and getting sober, and like addiction and substance use is a big part of your life. Or like has played a big role in your life.
Yes.
So yeah, tell me a little bit about that, because you said that was the first time you really had a length of sobriety.
Okay, yes. So I'm thinking about that interview and about that time. I was definitely probably like 6 months in on being clean. Oh man. So so that was like my first long time being sober. I had tried to get clean in Vegas maybe like 3 years ago, so like a year before that. But it was just one of those, like, I went in 30 days after like being on drugs for a long time. I went to like 2 AA meetings and I sat in the back, and then I just like, fuck this, I'm using. And then that's when I ended up in LA and got back into recovery. So from there, wow, I had written the first part of my book in like the first 4 months of me being clean. I had done another interview that did numbers that kind of like changed the trajectory, or at least put more of a spotlight onto recovery and me trying to introduce new themes into my life, moving out of old cycles.
What were those old cycles?
Oh man, if it wasn't the drugs, it was the erratic behavior, and then relationships. That was the highlight, the relationship with myself and how that reflected in the people that I chose to have around me. And maybe it was a huge awakening for me, because it wasn't like it was just like a roller coaster of like, I can't use, so what can I do? And I guess relationship was like the next best thing, and it was just one after another. And I had mentioned this when I had first started my blog, Love Me Know I Love You. And I was just like, man, I know for sure, like, slaw is honestly probably more my get down. I don't need to be, I'm very good at being able to just, when I need to stop doing something, I can just stop. But the relationships was not it, like I could not be with myself for any length of time. So, distracting, trying to, a lot of self-sabotaging, all of my like worst habits came to light.
When you got sober?
Yes, because that's when I was just like, it's not the fucking drugs, honestly. I mean, yes, big part of it, but it was in how I was living. It was the mindset that I was in. That was my first time getting out of, attempting to get out of sex work. I was out of it for the duration of me being sober. And then I found myself kind of going back in old cycles, because I had gotten a job working at a rehab, but I was just like, the way that they do that, just like get clean, have all this responsibility, and then go get a job so that you can do XYZ. And it's just like, it just felt like another rat race to me. And I was
Mm,
like, I just had to step back from that. And in the real world, um, I just had realized that, like, you know, my purpose is being an artist. So, me trying to do things with the way that my brain works in that way, it was just destined to happen. My relapse, my completely ignoring
mm,
every single thing that I thought was, I kept thinking, like, why does this happen to me? Why does this happen to me? And I started reflecting and realizing that, like, there comes a point where I have to take responsibility for how I choose to live, even when
mm,
I'm sober.
yeah. It-
Because when I'm sober, it's just still another fucking shit show. Like, it's better. It's much better. It feels good not chasing that anymore.
mhm.
But but it's like there's so much more to life outside of recovery.
Yes. So there's a few things there that I really want to bounce off of. First off, I really do agree that yeah, you can remove the substances away, but there's still a lot of work we have to do internally because our behaviors are gonna show up in different places of our life, like with relationships, career, just like day-to-day routine, and how we treat people, how we treat ourselves. Um, the first thing was you said like if I wanted to stop, I could. So do you feel as if you had that choice to like stop whenever you wanted?
Yes. And that's always been the thing. Like, I don't know. The way that I use is, I'm sure every person says this, like, oh, the way that I use is different. But I mean, this is just my experience with myself, is that when I have shit to do, I'll do it. And I think that that is shown in like my work ethic. Whenever I do pick myself back up, it's always 10 times stronger. It's because I'm like using, like, okay, like, obviously I'm not done, go on a run. And then there's the integration period when everything falls apart, because it inevitably does every single time. What can I do better than I did last time, you know?
Mm-hmm.
um because I'm humans, like, we develop so slow. Even like we notice that in comparison to like animals, you know, like
Mm.
animals, it's like, you know, a few weeks, like you got to start fucking thinking about going. It takes us years to grasp concepts, you know, all of these obvious, like you could tell somebody one thing, like, oh, you need to do such and such, but like how with the cliches, you know, they're so true. Why do we not like we say them, but are we really listening to what they're saying? Because like the answers are right in front of us, but I feel like, I don't know, it's really hard to see that sometimes.
Yeah. No, because they say like I think in the recovery community we were in and witnessed, a main thing is like we have to find the similarities and not the differences and like the way we used, and in reality we didn't have a choice and we can't stop when we wanted to stop. But I generally like I feel like now I'm developing like my own opinion and belief on recovery and addiction, and I'm not saying that it's the way to think about it. I'm just saying like I'm building a new perspective. And so like I appreciate you and like respect you for saying that, but yeah, I definitely do think it's different for everybody. And another thing you kind of talked about was it wasn't beneficial for you to be, yeah, you did the rehab thing, you did IOP, now you're in sober living, and then now you start working a treatment job. And your whole life becoming recovery and like sobriety, always talking about like addiction, how bad it got, and like seeing people at their worst. And then now you're living with all these people who are just like going through it. Like, that was just not beneficial. And then now I'm living with all these people. Now I'm going to IOP. Now I'm going to work, and then I have to do a meeting after. And your work is recovery. So yeah, I can see how that's not beneficial, but I kind of want you to talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I mean, I already have kind of like a crazy brain, you know, like I have to do a lot of things. I constantly am seeking structure. So I figured that for my recovery, it would be the best idea to stay in the recovery realm. That's the first experience. Like, okay, yes, there was a common saying, if you want what I have, do what I do. I want to be fucking clean. So I am going to see what all of that is about. Um, but honestly, it felt like, as I mentioned, it felt like another rat race being in the recovery community, especially where it's like your entire worth is based off of this extensive period of abstinence. And um, as somebody who I've really tried to stray away from labels, you know, that's why when people are like, "Oh, what do you do?" I'm like, I don't know. I freaking like to help people and make stuff, and I don't identify. I really try not to identify with my what I have done
Mm.
or what I have experienced or what I do to survive, or that's never. Treat others the way you want to be treated. I don't want to be known for the things that I did, the mistakes I've made, and surviving life. I want to, like, we are so much more than all of that, So I don't feel like I ever got to move out of being like a victim in the recovery scene, because it was just a constant state of self-reflection, and then having to go and help the next person. Being of service is like a huge thing there, but it's like I feel like I wasn't servicing myself for so long. Like a huge part of my my life has been excessively serving others to like the degree where it's like so that I don't ever have to worry about my own shit. And that just kind of perpetuated that for me. And you don't know until you try. And I know 100% I gave my best go around in that sort of setting. But I still felt like I was like masking, I felt like there's not a lot of people who really authentically, like, the chances of 70 people being together and like even 10% of them actually like, I need to get clean right now. That's very few and far and in between, honestly. We all slip up, and it's just, I felt shame, you know? It felt like high school.
Yeah.
And then having to go into recovery and then working into recovery was totally different, Because now it's like I've got like a little bit of time. I want to help people. That is the only thing I want to do in this lifetime, but not that soon,
Yeah.
Because it's like at the end of the day, if we're being real, like if somebody's asking me and breaking down like in a detox, this is just a general example, it's like realistically, when you want to get clean, you'll do it. You're not going to need no fancy bed. You're not going to need you're going to be so desperate. You're going to be like, I don't care. I'm going to do it. So it's like, I hold so much compassion, and it broke my heart all the time. It's like, I can't even save myself yet. And what makes me think I can save you and be authentic about that, So I definitely think that removing myself out of that was the best thing for me. Because follow slew, then it, relapsing, that changed the trajectory of like, I think that was me revisiting old cycles, re-meeting my old self outside of recovery in the real world, I feel like always being in that setting, there's kind of like I felt like it was voluntary brainwash for myself. Like, we all kind of know that, like, if we're going to do it, we're going to do it. And like me sitting here and doing all this is like, I don't know. I didn't want to get clean to have to like sit there doing regular shit. And I felt like I couldn't be my full self. And that's really important for me in my healing, is like trying to figure out who I am.
I definitely do agree though with like if you truly like to your core want recovery and sobriety, like you will stay sober. And that's where like I really do agree with the steps in that process. But
It's
there's
necessary.
there's a stigma with the steps. People just hate AA. It's
I think
cultish.
anybody could benefit from doing step work because that's spiritual work that you're doing. That really has nothing to do with addiction in itself.
right.
Like that's really just like how you clear out all that karma, like, you know, resetting this, balancing the scales, and then being able to move forward in a way where you can ultimately be of service to the world.
Exactly. So, and I just heard like with that, like step one, like you admit that you have like no control over this anymore and that like you're at your rock bottom. Okay, now like what's the next step? Now we're ready to get to move like to all the inventory and connecting with a higher power and all of that. And I think, yeah, maybe what you were lacking before was like balance. And like I believe you really did benefit from the experience you had like in that time in recovery in LA. So I think it was good for you, even though it was kind of hard.
Yes, but I like being uncomfortable because that
Yeah.
means that I'm doing something different. I'm so used to the chaos that like it was really interesting seeing. I mean, I started that whole garden there, you know, like
Yeah.
I just like I really was just in my zone. Like I was just really using that time to just like figure out where I wanted to be, what I wanted
Oh,
to make
yeah.
of all of that, you know, because everything that I go through, I always want to like turn that into something better. Like how can I use
Yeah.
this experience to like propel me or help someone else?
For sure. No, I remember like just witnessing you in the same house, like living in the same house. Like, yeah, we all had our different schedules, but like I remember seeing you like working on a garden in the backyard and like starting to go to church and like always reading, cooking, baking. Like you were doing so much and you were like
Yes.
you really were on that like path of like doing the things like you wanted to and like finding those hobbies
Yes.
and stuff. And like I do want to ask you like what led to the relapse after that.
Yeah.
But I do want to touch on a little bit about how your addiction looked and like what led you to go into treatment in the first place.
Like in the very first leading up until then.
What led you to like wanting to seek like sobriety?
It's funny because it's actually always repeated, like the same event that led up to me going into recovery 3 times. It was always like some super dramatic relationship shit, and then I was like, "What the fuck am I doing?" And then I get clean, and then it starts over again.
Yeah. But that's what it is. It's cycles and patterns.
Yes.
And then the same pattern, I think in just life in general with different things, we will keep encountering the same issue and keep falling in the same pattern until we decide to correct that pattern.
Yes.
That makes sense.
Yes, and that's definitely like where I say like I would not take back anything that happened in the past like 5 years. 100% every experience had to happen for my growth and so that I could really get out of this mentality that like I was not in control of my own life. So leading up into me going into recovery the first time, it was like that was the first time I got out of like the lifestyle shit, you know, trapping and sex work and just kind of hooligan shit, you know. I mean, I've been doing that since I was like 12. There's not much to do on the streets, you know, and like I was always trying to get away from something. So
And doing it for so like since you were so young, it's almost all you knew and what you maybe felt the most comfortable doing.
Yeah, I mean it's kind of just it's real out there, you know, like that's just what I saw and that's just what I ended up around and that was just my path. And to be fair, like I had options to like maybe not live such a dramatic life, but something about me just always just I follow my heart, you know, and sometimes I want to go into some really dark places, but I think that that's where I've like found the most light, you know? So every single time that I went through something that was like pivotal and like changed the trajectory or like realigned me to where I was supposed to be. Yeah, so me going into treatment that first time was kind of just like, okay, I need to get off the drugs because that was the first I've been on drugs for like 14 years, you know? So like and I was cool until I started doing fentanyl, like, you know, and like that really everything else like I was just like always tripping and like partying, you know? But I wasn't doing like narcotics like that. And fentanyl just really messed that up for me, and like, or actually no, it did what it had to do. That was the thing
Mm.
that was finally like, holy shit, I have to stop. Like, I have to stop doing this shit.
What did fentanyl do for you exactly?
Because you always say it's not going to get worse, it's not going to get worse, it's not going to get worse, and then fentanyl hits you, and then you're just like, yeah, this is about as bad as it gets, buddy. It's like every single time that you are using, you risk dying, like, for sure. And it's just like, I don't know, that was like a huge wake up call. I was like, I love life and I love being here. Why am I like I'm like subconsciously on a suicide mission? And you don't really see that until you like hit that rock bottom, and fentanyl brought me there. And then that's when I, went into recovery, and I give myself a huge pat on the back because I really made the best out of my experience there. I know that for a fact.
So yeah, that leading you to recovery. So now back in like 2022, 2023, you were in that recovery scene very deep. And then what later led to the relapse? Like what was going through your head?
I mean, the thing that triggered my initial relapse was just like, I did a lot of thinking about all of this and how this like transpired, and at the end of the day, I feel like that just wasn't my community per se, I'm very much like I stick to like one or two people, like, and I'm not really like a overall, that's just not how I am socially,
You like a small group.
Yes. And I don't know, there comes a point where like I've learned my whole life to just not attach myself to people too much. Because I really care like so much about everyone I meet, and that gets really overwhelming. So, I don't know. I think that me not wanting to integrate into there, and then people not really knowing me. So when I didn't feel like I was getting the support that I deserved, I don't know. I used, at the end of the day, I used a situation as an excuse to go get loaded. Cause honestly, I wanted to use like for the month before that. And I was just like, you know what? Fuck this shit. I'm going. And yeah, I got drunk at a Total Wine bathroom, and and I was just like, okay, this is it. And then from there, I tried to do the whole integrate back in, but I was just like, fuck that shit, and then I still had shit to do. Like, I still had lessons that had to be learned, and I wasn't going to be able to learn them in that environment.
Yeah.
But it did teach me a lot about community living, and it definitely taught, it opened my eyes a lot to people's situations. Wow, so many beautiful people in that like whole scene. Like, everybody has such a like amazing story, like you wouldn't tell, and then you look at them and like, we see each other kind of like in that pink cloud phase, and you see like people at their best, but like, that fades out and then real life hits.
This just came to my mind. I do have other questions, but this was the main one. I remember somewhere in there you got baptized.
Yes.
I don't remember when.
Yes. Oh my gosh. That was also so like, I made it that far because of the people that I chose to be around. Like, I don't know. I don't like name dropping or anything, but my friend there, Mariah, she was, I don't know if you saw me and her together all the time.
We went to the circus with her.
Yes, we did. I loved that. That was so fun. That was fun. So fun.
Yeah.
Man, that girl, she really helped the course of my recovery because we vibed on so many levels. She was like a rock and roll chick, but she was real with God, like her connection to that source was just so prevalent. And she would sit up front with me, and they would joke about how we always brought friends with us to church. Like, but it was just such a good vibe. And it was never pressure, it was just me and her loved being there. We would do Bible study. I think that, all of my running away and trying to find experiences has been me trying to find God, me trying to find that home within myself that we were talking about earlier. Um, I've always known that God is, there's an energy, there's an energy here that like really cares and wants us all to like be okay, and and that's how I've made it, honestly, by just my attitude, just like, you know what, I have to make it. I have to be okay. Like, and if I die, then I'm dead. Don't have to worry
Mm.
about that, but like I have to keep pushing and I have to keep trying. I have to keep pushing through the adversity. And because I knew that in my heart, like there was something bigger than what was being presented to me. And when I started going to church, over at Freedom,
Mm-hmm.
the way that Pastor Justice had, the way that he preaches is just so authentic, and it really like it stuck to me, like we all have our flavor that really like resonates, and that really stuck with me because it was taking church is just so much different than what I remembered, maybe I was like younger and I just didn't understand, but it was just so relatable.
Yeah.
And honestly, like following Jesus particularly and his story of truth, that that story resonates with me a lot, and I feel like it resonates with a lot of people, especially in recovery. um Being the sacrificed true scapegoat black sheep, um so it just felt like home, and that was time for me to like claim my identity in
Mm.
following Jesus and follow, like, calling it Christianity.
That church, like Freedom Church, like it was really good. I'm not a Christian, and I don't know if I would ever get baptized in this lifetime. But like I truly enjoyed going to that church every Sunday. And like that pastor, like I just felt like at home there. And it was like, it felt like a community. And like, regardless of like who you are, what you're doing, or what you've been through, there was just love in that room.
Yeah, yes. I did the Thanksgiving drive and all
Yeah.
that. I loved being there. Um, we'd go on like Thursdays. We did the
Yeah.
recovery groups there sometimes. It felt like home, and I got pretty real with them, because I started getting shy and I
Yeah.
stopped showing up. And then one of the leaders there, man, the mentorship that they have there is just a phenomenal. I told her, I was like, I really want to be there, but sometimes I feel like I have to like wear a mask and I
Mm.
can't be my full self. And then that's where I'm like, but I know you guys aren't bad people, but it feels like it's going against something. I don't know. I feel like there's an elephant in the room. And she was like, I was like, if you want me to show up, I will, but I can't, like, I have to speak my mind on it. And it was like, done in a very like, I just want to get my point across because I love to over explain. And she was like, Izzy, please come so I can give you a big hug. You're always welcome here. And valid. Like, I don't know. It felt so real. And that's all I'm ever looking for. I'm just looking for like the real thing.
I think there's definitely like, I stigmatize Christianity. I think Jesus was a great guy. But I think, you know how like within AA, like it's really the people who make the environment. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So like with church and like with Christianity, I view it in such a way where it's like it feels like there's rules, and that's like where I kind of can't get down with it. Like, yeah, God is forgiving, and like you're gonna go to heaven if you say like Jesus Christ is your Lord and Savior. You know what I mean? Like, what are your overall thoughts like on the stigmas with Christianity?
One will side note, like, it's so funny because everybody stigmatizes Christianity, but I don't know, all the Christians I've ever met, I don't know, for some reason I got lucky. um oh my god, those people just like sprinkled in between, just like always had an angel, and like so raw, and just like so, I always felt at home around those people.
Mm-hmm.
um so I don't know. To me, so I'm very much like a skeptic.
Yeah.
I don't like just blindly follow anything. No.
Yeah.
Does this look like a face of somebody who follows the rules? No, I'm not gonna. I do not like blindly follow things. Like, I've really thought it out.
Mhm.
So that's why me giving my life to Christ was like, that was a very well thought out after 12 years of searching decision. And I like to say that my free thinking brought me to God, and God freed me of my thinking.
Mm.
Um, because I wanted to just know the answer, know the answer, know the answer. What is going on? Why am I here? Why are we doing this? Why do we treat each other like this? Why is there not more community? Why are we just like ignoring the fact that like the world is being stripped of its humanity, essentially, you know? Like everything is just so not connected anymore. And I don't know. So once I called it God, once I was like, this is not like, God is the unexplainable stuff that is happening around reason, like the
Mhm.
reasonable actions that are happening. Like, it's the stuff that you can't,
Explain.
it's just has to be felt and experienced. It's not something that you can sell someone, really.
Mhm.
It's not something you can just put in a box. You can't write it down. All you can do is share your experience and how it like forms your life, and how when you start walking with these principles of discipline and doing good for others and being outside of self, um, I don't know. I think it's just another piece of the pie, you know, because I still, um, Buddhism, Kabbalah, um, Hinduism,
You
like,
still like practice or
I mean, it's just, it all fits together.
yeah.
It's all different things to explain this. Um, and I just love it all. You
Mhm.
know, it's all symbolism. It's all storytelling. So it's like when you can start connecting all those dots and you're like, okay, like there is common ground. I see I hate when I've never understood when people were like, it's either science or religion. And I'm like, science God is the storytelling to the science. It all works together. Like I never saw that. Well, for me, that is like just what that was never a question to me. I was like, these two things can live in the same
Mhm.
realm.
Yeah.
So I don't know. The stigma with Christianity is just, I feel like religion just ruins a lot of shit. Because it's, at the end of the day, I say Christianity specifically just as an emphasis that I follow Christ, the truth,
Yeah.
but I don't really identify. I'm just learning. I'm
Mhm.
just a student
Yeah.
of the world, you know? I don't want to, like, especially when you start getting onto platforms, you don't ever want to send someone like down a path of like getting controlled again. Like if that voice in your head is telling you to go against yourself and humanity, that is not God, and that's a really hard thing to explain to some people, you know?
I feel like religion and spirituality and finding a connection with God, there's freedom in that. Like for me, yeah, for me it was freedom, knowing that I'm not in control of everything, and then I can give like my issues to God, my anxiety to God. Like I don't have to hold this anymore because I can give it to God. But the one thing I just can't wrap my head around with it. I almost want you to sell me on this. I can't get around sin. Like this is a sin. Oh, this is a sin. You're gonna go to
um,
hell if you do this. And then there's certain sins that are like that certain people do every day. Does that make do you see what I'm
yeah,
saying?
I don't, we're human.
Yeah.
That is the beautiful part. We are not like, just for the sake of the storyline, so Jesus died so that we could sin and be forgiven.
Mm.
So, I like to really read into the context. What is the message? The message that I get from the story of Jesus is that often as a society we sacrifice the truth so that we can live comfortably.
Mm.
Um, And that is something that you can't really, until you really like wake up to what's happening around you and you see the common theme of those who really are trying to warn you about what's going on and like all the stuff that's happening, especially now in 2025 in America, is insane. Yes, insane everywhere, but I really like to emphasize, focusing on home first before we help others, there's so much distraction about what's going on. Like, I feel like the past couple years has been like so much like focus everywhere else, but what's happening here. And then we blink and look, and what's happening now is kind of crazy. Yeah. We don't really, once you recognize that, once I recognize the theme of, okay, nobody has to die for their sins anymore. We are essentially always working on a path of forgiveness. If this is the hypothetical situation, I'm a firm believer. I'll always say it. I don't know where this ties in, but I think that this is hell. This is the state of constant suffering until we release ourselves from it. Samsara, that sort of theme, of just constantly going through and like this cyclic fucking hammer of weirdness and bullshit and consequences of your actions until you break that pattern and you get to essentially, we're human. This is why the Christianity is such a wonderful model, because it walks in the path of forgiveness, where we are always like, do not judge, because as soon as you judge somebody, you're going to put that right into your karmic path. And the whole entire point of this to me is that like a constant, like humbling experience to get us to a point where we can empathize with everybody.
Yeah.
The goal is to just constantly walk in forgiveness. And because nobody is perfect, that's why, my book, it's like, I'm a very spiritual person, and it's funny because then I was reading it and I was like, wow, this is all like my darkest thoughts. And I was like, but that's what it's all about. It's confronting that shadow. It's recognizing that I am the evil, I am the good. I need to correct. And there is no correction of anything, because we are all capable of so much to any degree. And it's like, once you recognize that both of these are a part of you, which one will you like walk in? I don't know. We're all human, the whole point isn't to like, we don't gotta
be perfect.
No,
Yeah.
I love raw, ugly, like I like real, like in any context, the fake shit just doesn't hit the same. Like life is not, you can't experience like actual gratitude until you have had nothing and have suffered and have had to fight and fuck and bleed to get your way through life.
I kind of want to touch a little bit more on forgiveness, because forgiveness is hard, especially when you're trying to forgive yourself. I think forgiveness, like forgiving other people, for me has been a lot easier of a process. Have you personally struggled with forgiveness for yourself and maybe forgiving other people?
Yes, forgiveness has been the theme. It was like one of those practice what you preach things, for me.
Yeah.
Man, one of the best in the whole shit show that was my last year, the best thing that I could have done, because I have like I had this like this theme where people would be like, I'm so cool and I'm like a good person until I'm angry. And I was like, I had to recognize that this was a common theme in my life, that when I am angry, like it's like rage, it's like because I think that I don't really tell people how many times I've already forgiven them until it's like just snaps and breaks, you know? Um, Sometimes I want to keep that like thing in my head where everything is okay.
Yeah.
So I'm just like, you know what? We're all human. It is what it is. It is what it is. And constantly just like be the doormat to life. Um, so the best thing that happened out of last year was me realizing that that was exactly how I felt about my mom. My mom is like this wonderful woman, so fucking amazing, so cool. Like the fact that I'm even half of her is just hypes me up. You know, like she's just so badass and just taught me how to like really be like a solid woman. And but there was also, you know, drawbacks to that. It was her first time though, you know, in life, and there was like huge themes in my life that I had to like really acknowledge, you know, that I didn't want to be like her, and on the path that I wasn't gonna like be any better, and I wanted to break that cycle for us, you know. Um, oh my God, forgiving my mother like healed so much in me.
Yeah.
Um, I looked at her and I was just like, you know, no matter what happens in this life, like, I always love you and I'll always like strive for us to be good, you know? I was like, I just can't have you like lying to me anymore, you know? Like,
She wanted truth.
I just wanted her to be like acknowledged that, you know, nobody's like born a monster. Nobody is like born, um, little girls aren't born fast, you know? Um, that shit is like cause and effect, you know? And I feel like as women, we don't because it happens to us, we overlook it in ways where it's like so subtle, but essentially like I don't know, I at the same time it's one of those taking responsibility that like when I did recognize that I could stop it, you know, but I don't know. I knew that I had to I wasn't going to ever have that patience with myself until I had patience with her. Like the fact
Yeah.
that like I have that with her now, where like we actually talk and like she like talks to me as like a person, like as a friend. I was like, Mom, like I know this is both of our first times here, and I'm not trying to make you feel like crap about anything. Like there's nothing I can realistically do to like. I was like, I just need us to acknowledge it happened, you know,
Yeah.
and getting that healing, you know. I know sometimes we sit there and we say, oh, anything, yes, forgiveness, forgiveness, until this happens, and then somebody is not worthy of it. Nope, that's not how that works, you know, because we don't know the circumstances that lead up to people's actions, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Like, potato is not potato, you know? Like,
That's the first time I've heard that.
it's not, yeah, it's just, I don't know, like, you can't look at everything at a surface level. You have to be able to, like, stop looking at things as good and bad and just they're just things that happen as a result of how can I go back and how can I do something that will like break that cycle.
Yeah, I definitely believe you're the one in your bloodline and your family that's breaking that generational that cycle. But what kind of came up for me, I'm like, is that you got me kind of thinking about anger. Like, is anger really a bad thing? We view it as this horrible thing, and it can be bad. It can lead us to be aggressive and all these things. But I think for me, my experience with anger is I've always tried to not be angry. I've tried my hardest to not be angry at other people, which led me to beating myself up emotionally and physically. I used to hit my head against the wall. I used to like just hit my head until like I just started bleeding. I used to just like,
same.
you know, as a kid, like you just bring so much pressure to your head that your nose starts bleeding. Like I used to just hit myself all the time, beat myself because I am just so angry at everybody else, but I don't have it in me to like take it out on you. And I had a therapist. You may be familiar with him, but he the whole like year and a half he was my therapist. Our whole thing was like working on anger, And he wanted me to actually feel angry and be angry and use it as empowerment and actually use it as like a way of empowerment. Because at the end of the day, I was wronged in many different instances. I was like hit, abused, yelled at when I shouldn't have been. And just like bad things, yes, did happen to me. And of course, yes, I've hurt other people, but like I didn't deserve that.
Yeah.
In turn, that makes me fucking angry.
Yeah.
And I forget if like anger is like a secondary emotion. I think it is a secondary emotion. Like sadness comes first or something, and then we mask it with anger. So like but I do think it's very important to look at both of them. Like allow yourself to feel that sadness and allow yourself to feel that anger. Because yeah, like nobody deserves to be like hurt and abused and like experience trauma, but it fucking happens and it's fucking infuriating.
Yeah.
So yeah, what's like been your experience with anger? I'm kind of curious.
I just, yeah, similarly, I mean, I've just always I've been like same getting abused since like way too young, like way too. And I don't know, for a long time I couldn't fight back, you know? And I just knew that if I ever whenever I have gotten to that point, like I don't know. I don't know what I was really fighting. I don't know why it felt like that. You know, I've always been a very much like I'll always hurt myself before other people, but same, I was wronged, you know, and it took a long time to like really for someone to tell me like that wasn't okay. Because everybody just normalizes it so much. But like it changes how you communicate, you know?
It changes you
Like
in so many ways.
that's why I could never get along with my mom. She'd be like so frustrated with how I communicate. I'm like, I got it from you. We never learned how to talk. You know? Everything just was like run for cover. So anger's always been much more I don't think I've allowed myself to feel angry until like it's like way too late.
Yeah.
And that was a hard one. And really thinking about how many times I was more so just angry with myself because why the fuck do I like everything that I've ever been like exploded over? It was poor management, but it was like, but it wasn't my fault. But like, there just comes a point where once I took responsibility for it and I was like, okay, it wasn't my fault then, but it's like, do I want to perpetuate this? Do I really want that to be the excuse forever? Is like, this happened to me, so I'm going to treat people like that forever.
It's really hard because yes, we all play a part in everything. Like, even if the situation was really shitty for me, yes, I played a part in it. Maybe I like just let it happen for too long, or maybe I could have spoken out.
And
maybe
this is like outside of childhood stuff because that's not called for. But yes, in reference to like as an adult, like when you get into like, you know, toxic relationships and stuff like that.
Yeah. And then like at some point we like, I may have played a part in it, but like I'm exhausted of being a doormat now.
Yeah.
But not that that's all our fault. Like, you know, what I know today is because of like the way I grew up, and now I'm trying to unlearn these things.
Yes.
And it's like almost like fighting for being like empowered and like our independence and like speaking up for yourself is like just a thing I've personally had to like learn to do. And I believe maybe you have as well.
Yes. And that's where I think that ties into what you were talking about, where anger can be good.
Yeah.
Because especially as women of color, you know, I feel like there's a huge stigma on being angry. I can't be angry. I can't defend myself because it comes off as like rage all the time. Like I'm very emotional, you know? So it's like, but if I get loud, I'm a threat, you know? So it's like, why am I crying, you know? Like it's not that bad. Like I do X, Y, Z for you, you know, just all the repeated standing up for myself. I feel like I really do like hold it in until I'm like, this is enough.
You think even today?
Yes, that is my like, because I say things so nicely to a certain degree, you know, like I really am like always trying to like understand where people are coming from, and also just not really judge people's actions, you know, like things just happen. People, like, we're all just coexisting, you know? So it's like I really try not to like hang shit over people's head, but it's like after a while it's like when you're not being heard, and like I don't know, feeling misunderstood really is a huge trigger for me.
Mm.
I don't know, it's always just it's been empowering for me. Like I don't feel bad for a lot of the times when I have been loud, because like I had every right to be honest with you. Um this whole culture of just like you have to express yourself in XYZ way, and if not, it could be misinterpreted as not what you're intending. And um I don't know, I'm just a generally loud person, you know? So a lot of the times, I don't know, it's passion. A lot of the times I'm not angry, I'm just passionate, you know? Um I'll die on my hills, you know?
Mhm.
Like um cuz I know that I always just want to like get along. I don't want problems
Yeah.
ever, you know? Um but I don't know. Yes, anger has definitely run my life for a very long time, and allowing yourself to be angry is definitely just finding those different outlets has
Yeah.
definitely helped me. It's there is no right or wrong.
Yeah.
You gotta like being angry tells you something. It's like, what are you angry about? Are you
Your
feeling
body is
threatened?
your body's
Yeah.
communicating with you.
Yeah, so it's like I'm not upset for having that. I will take responsibility for like, you know, violence is never the answer.
Mhm.
And and that's just something, you know, I'm really an emotional girl, you know, so it's really sensitive,
Yeah.
and um it's like something that's why I like, you know, metal saved my music my life, you know, because I fucking love thrashing around, and I really
Yeah.
like it wells up in me and I like to release it, you know.
Expression is a huge part, I think. Of course in an artist's life, but I think for a lot of people we kind of don't think about it sometimes.
Yeah, no, I'm always trying to get the energy out, you
Yeah.
know?
I
So,
think you're very good at doing that. I've struggled with expression for a really long time. For me, like I first had to start with like my words. How can I like articulate like what I'm thinking and how what I'm feeling, as well as like allowing myself to like feel what's going on in my body and what is that telling me.
yeah.
Like that's telling me what I want.
Yeah.
Okay, now I have to put it to words.
Yes.
It sounds so simple, but that was so fucking hard for me. And then okay, like now I want to pick up a camera and like make some fucking videos. It's like okay, now I'm learning those basics and figuring out how like what story I want to tell. So, and I kind of want to ask you about that, like about expression. I feel like you do it in so many ways with tattoos, with art, with writing, painting, gardening, like all these things you do so much.
It's so funny because I was, you know, being misunderstood was like the theme of the past like 3-4 years,
Yeah.
and I was like, does anybody like why are these all these assumptions about me, or why is I'm like, oh fuck, I don't really I overshare like my like life, but I never actually like talk to people, and I don't
Mm,
realize that like I say much more in my head than I do in a group. I don't think that like you get what I
I really
mean.
do. Sometimes
So
I think I said something, but no, I just my thought was so loud.
yeah,
Yeah.
and since I have so much going on, nobody ever like I never really allowed that part of me to like come out, you know, because
Yeah.
I don't know, I like to keep I live life for me. Like I really have done that always. I've always done what I felt like I needed, and there's so many different mediums I've been able to explore, and I
Hmm.
realized like before writing um it was art, you know, tattooing myself, and like that getting tattooed was since I was like 14, 15. So like that was kind of, and before that it was painting, writing, um kind of anything, you know. I
Yeah.
was just a very active kid, and yeah, so fashion, I've always
Yeah.
been like, you know, I've always loved dressing up. I've always like, you know, liked using all my different styles to express how I'm feeling and be able to like, it's cool. Like you can essentially change how the world looks at you based off of an outfit that you
Yeah.
wear. And sometimes I like to play with that sometimes, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, I don't know. I really like to get it out however I can. And finding the words for it, oh my God, it's so crazy. That's like our dialogue in our head versus what actually comes out. And it's like, it's
Mm-hmm.
so much more beautiful in my head than it ever is. My words don't ever do it
Yeah.
justice.
Yeah. No, I get that 100%. What do all of your tattoos like mean to you? Like, what is the power of like this permanent ink on your body?
Oh man. I don't know. It's just like my story. People get tattooed for different reasons, you know, but I feel like for me it's always just been trying to get what's on the inside out
Yeah.
in a way where it was like this is me. And like when I look at all my tattoos, like I know what um I can kind of like gauge like where I was, and it's like a journey now, you know. It's like I've gone through like transformations with it. And it's all I don't regret any of it. It's all like foretelling.
Yeah.
I don't know. I some people like, you know, save up all their money and drop fucking a bunch of, you know, cash on tattoos, and then it's like what's good or bad is very up for grabs, you know, but I know that like I've always gone for like the principle of things, you know, not the appearance. So that's why it's like, you know, I kind of
Yeah.
I'm like hanging on to my like garbage can tats.
Yeah.
I know I have good ones too, but I don't know. I just never really cared. I just thought it was fucking badass, and
Yeah.
um, it's definitely so expresses what's been going on for me. So it's been cool.
No, I love that. No, I love like yeah, I have some like shitty ones, but they all tell a story about that time in my life. And that's kind of the whole point. Because like sure you like regretting a tattoo later in life, like no, I don't think I'll have that experience of regretting it later because like that meant a lot to me in that moment when I got it. So it is a story. It's like you're now you can like physically see like a story on my body.
Yeah. Yeah. I just, you know, we're here in this lifetime once, you know, I'm gonna look badass doing it. I don't know. Like, people be like, that is like so much commitment. And I'm like, I
Have you
guess. I mean, honestly, like, that's fine. I'm not really, I do so much crazy shit with my appearance, you know, I'm not really stressing it. And I've always been more so worried about like the inside looking better. I've, I really don't think I've ruined my face yet, you know. I think it all like really makes sense with me, especially when you start to get to know me, you know, because everything is kind of like a double meaning, you know. Like I didn't even realize the theme of death that was so prevalent on in my life, and until I really started looking at all of my tattoos, and I didn't know I had like, you know, this die, little like kill yourself stuff, kill me. And I started like looking at it more spiritually.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, I've probably just been like craving that like ego annihilation.
Mm. I feel like that's important to do in life.
Yeah.
Obviously, we can't fully kill our ego. Like it's always there. It's never gonna go, but you can always deflate it.
Yeah, there's just always a better way to walk where like you're not like identifying with like all these like external things. Um I mean, cuz ego helps us create identity in this life, you
Mm-hmm.
know? It's just like the attachment to that identity that I feel like just needs to be
There needs to be a gap with it.
Yeah.
That's like my goal, is to not be so attached to like egoic things.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. Just I am just me. I am just a human trying to freaking figure it out like everyone else.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, I am not where I've been or what I've done or what I plan to do. I am always just going to be me.
In this present moment.
Yeah. And then tomorrow and that.
Yeah.
So
I kind of want to start getting to where you are now. I feel like we kind of we got on a sidetrack, a long one, but I loved it.
You said we're talking all day.
We're talking all day. Yeah, because we left off on your relapse, and then I was like curious on your experience with God. You said you fell back into old patterns, and then I would say today you don't feel as if you're in those same patterns.
Yeah.
Because like now you're not living in LA anymore. Now you're in Providence, Rhode Island, and you kind of like taken a different path with things. And now you're more focused on art and self-expression. But you're also in welding school, which is going to be helpful with your art path and career. But I'm curious on like how that came about. So because the last time I think I saw you in LA, you relapsed.
Yes.
And you were in like a low part. And then you said relationships and like almost like being addicted to relationships was like a big issue in that. So I am kind of like curious on like the route that like addiction to like love and relationships played in that relapse.
So, well, ultimately it all comes down to the relationship with myself. The people were all yes individually, like it was its thing, but it just kept coming back to the relationship I have with myself and why I felt like I had to like essentially like sacrifice self every single time to like just constantly pouring from an already empty cup, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Because I mean, I used to like be able to sit through things like different scenarios and it's just every single time I get into the relationship, I'm just like always back on heroin.
Mm-hmm.
Every time. It's like, and that comes down to a like, that has nothing to do with nobody but me, you know? Like, it doesn't matter if they're using, not using. Like, I get so fucking overwhelmed and I don't want to express that anger. And I don't want to come off like I care too much. Because I always feel like whenever I care too much or I open myself up in that way, it like gets used against me, or like I haven't had a good track record of like really like the fact that I've made it this long, like even at my worst, still trying to do for others instead of myself.
What I'm hearing is codependency in a sense. And you said you believe that you would have benefited a lot from Sex and Love Addicts Anonymous.
Yes, and I loved it. It was great because it's not, and it freaking like it really sets the tone for the fact that like in SLA, you the goal is not complete abstinence. It's having a better relationship with the thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel it. I was just like, that's my own little fucking. I don't know why that model isn't still taken seriously in other programs, you know, where it's like, you have to stop. It's not the person. It's not the thing. It's not the substance. It's your relationship to it. And I had attended a few meetings and I don't even know if I'm supposed to say that, but
I don't know either.
But yes, it was great for me. It definitely I didn't like stick to it, but I definitely took what I needed and like applied that.
I'm really curious on like what your thought process was. Like even if the person you were with wasn't using heroin, I'm curious on your thought process of like, okay, I'm entering this relationship now. I'm kind of craving heroin right now. Like what was your I want to kind of like get into that.
It's normally just to like I'm in a relationship. I mean, it also doesn't help that like when I relapsed, it was like a like multiple people went out situation, you know? But that was it. We as addicts in that setting like to use other people for our like excuse to fucking jet. Like how I said I used that fucking meltdown to like I kind of wanted to fucking relapse
Yeah.
before it happened. So like that was that was all me when I went out, even though other people were involved, um and we were using together. So like it wasn't like a it was like I started out using, and then when I had to go back into like sex work, I have to use like
What do you mean you had to go back into sex work?
just like cuz it's all I really knew, you know?
You felt as if that's the route you had to take.
It felt like, well, if it's just like if nobody's going to do something, I will do something. You know? Like I'm willing to like do that. I was very disconnected from like myself, and like I was just like the show has to go on, essentially, you know? Like you don't just give up. And at for some reason, I always felt like that's all I had to offer.
Mm.
But to be fair, in this society, it's not like you're really given a lot of options as a woman. Like, it's like you either have to be hyper independent, and then you're like labeled as like, I don't know if you see how they like basically have painted women who are successful and driven. It like they essentially make it sound like you're going to be single for the rest of your life. And I'm like, I don't want to be alone my whole fucking life.
So, what's your ideal relationship that you want to have with other people?
I think that the whole like past 3 4 years, it's back to it really didn't have to do with other people. It really had to do with like me using other people as a catalyst to live instead of like using my own dreams. You know, I'm always trying to just like come up with somebody or with other people. I never really considered doing that for myself because I'm kind of happy with like nothing, and I feel like that's the kind of energy I've always put out there. Like if I'm going to get the shit end of the stick, I'm going to be happy about it because, you know, you have to be grateful for what you're given.
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of just like kept me in this loop of always like receiving like subpar fucking love and connection.
You told me on the way here that you haven't used any hard substances in 9 months.
Yes, no narcotics, like meth, fentanyl, heroin, freaking yeah, that was insane.
How did you get to that point today?
Honestly, a lot was happening, and I had like a lot of freaking like I read the signs, you know, like everything was telling me I had to freaking like be done. Like it was like I saw where my life was going to go, and I had a moment to like, you know, get out and think, um and I used that opportunity to do it.
Mm-hmm.
I got on a plane. I didn't want to be a bother when I came back because I hadn't been with at my mom's for a really long time. I was just like, please, God. I was like, please, I just want to, I don't want to have to ever go through this again. And I don't want to be a bother. And I literally had like no symptoms of coming, no withdrawals. And I was like using heavily, you know. I got off and I was just like, I have shit to do. Like, I realized like,
You got off that plane with a mission.
yeah, I got a fucking, I fucking detoxed myself at home. I got into the gym. I was telling you, you know, I was like struggling with health insurance and stuff. So, I was just like, what can I do for myself? Like right now in this moment until then, instead of waiting around. So, I mean, that comes diet and like physical exercise and, like not putting myself in stressful situations, almost falling back into the relationship cycle, but then realizing if I want to do this different, I have to do it differently, and I have to do it for myself.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. I just when you have shit to do, you got shit to do. Like I said, you know, there really is like there's no excuse. There comes a point where it's like I either want it or I don't. And
Yeah.
if I don't have to beat myself up for it, you know? It's like it's fucking hard. It's hard to go through life as anybody. I do not think I am like the only fucking tortured soul on this earth, you know? Like the wonderful part about this journey is getting to meet so many different types of people and realizing like, oh my god, my problems are like it's all one little my problems are still so valid, but
Yeah.
oh my god, it's real out there. We are all like a part of something that is not freaking feeding our souls, you know? Everything is so like draining and like you were saying, like disconnected. And
I think one of the biggest things for me was struggling with considering my issues, my problems, the things I went through, like as like valid. That was like a whole process for me because I was like, the person beside me has been through so much worse. So I'm comparing my issues to theirs, and I'm perceiving my issues as nothing and a lot smaller, if that makes sense. So it's like, yeah, maybe like if you want to compare problems, sure, like their problems might be greater and more harder to get through, but that doesn't make mine any less valid.
no, it doesn't. And I think that's a huge part of the healing process is finding your truth, because once you really like sit down and you're like, okay, I really want to get better. What what am I bullshitting myself about? Because like as a woman, I'll speak for myself, but I've noticed a pattern where it's like women are mainly like we haven't been given like a space to evolve. You know, like we're still very much like not at a level playing field. Like the most um it everything just keeps us like subservient,
Mm-hmm.
and it doesn't really feed like our goals and dreams, because like everything is shit and nobody wants to like acknowledge like what we are doing to each other as like a
Species. Nice. Now that word sounds weird. Species.
species. So it's like when so many people are like lying about what's happening to you as a girl, or like just trying to like call you dramatic for trying to say your truth, or it's like you never really know like did that happen the way that I thought it did?
And that's what fucks me up too.
And it's like, and then am I an asshole for like thinking this, or am I using this as like an excuse, or like, and then it's like, and no one wants to talk about it, you know, like, so it's finding that truth is so freaking important, because once you figure out that truth about yourself, getting to know like how did your mom get raised, like that's the thing, is I don't think people realize like our moms are strong, because like the last few generations, like we are the most like free that we have ever been, you know. That shit was like normal, like people were like getting like pedophilia culture was like much more like like grown men were marrying like 15
And that
year
was
olds.
what, like not even 100 years ago?
That was like not even like 60 years ago,
That
to
wasn't
be
that long
honest
ago.
with you. Like if you ask about like your grandparents and when they met, and like
30-year age gap.
yeah, and it's like we're growing as a species now. We see what that has done. We see that that has been setting evolution back for both, because it's like when you keep women in a subservient state, it doesn't allow like men will go to something easier because it doesn't challenge them. So when you're not being challenged, you're not evolving. Therefore, we are always staying at the same. So with all that being said, you know, I think when we start acknowledging the way that we've been moving, how we've been like reproducing, the intentions behind it, our relationships with our mothers, with our fathers, getting to know them and how they were raised, like there has to be forgiveness and grace, because it wasn't right then, and there's nothing you can do about it then. Like now, But we can move on from that. And
We can learn and
anybody who says, oh, that's just not possible, they're the problem. That's that mindset. Why not? Why can we not like change the social agreement that is happening? Like, we can set new standards. We can hold each other accountable without it being shame. And that's the big thing too. It's all shame based, you know, like so much has been happening to both men and women. And it's just like everybody is just so, no one wants to talk about it, you know? No one wants to talk about the elephants in the room.
What do you think, like, you've gone through a lot of experiences and have learned a lot of things, have had setbacks and then moved forward from them. What do you think is like the greatest thing? What's the greatest lesson you've like learned from and like appreciated? And that has like had them almost like the most benefit. Like, what is just something that like you now keep at the forefront of your mind because it helps you?
Authenticity. Like being true to self. Because when you know yourself, you will know others, you know? Like when you acknowledge that, like we all come from different places and from different experiences, but like we're all the same. Like if you really like think about like how scary the programming is, it's like we let things like social status, economic status, like change, like the way someone's dressed, this color of their skin, all these things, like we're all the same. If you really think about how fucked up it is that like this world has us thinking that we're not all the same, and we all have like the ability to connect with each other, I think that's when you really like break free, you know? And being true to myself and just knowing that, you know what, even if I fuck up, I can own that fuck up, because you know, when I realized that I wrote my entire life and I was the reason why it fucked up, I was like, holy shit, that means I have the power to write it and make it better. Like that was like, I was like, thank fucking God, because I thought that this shit was happening for no reason. And that's the worst. It's like, I don't mind a little pain every now and then, but like, what's the reason? Like, there has to be like a learning lesson to it.
I want you to tell me a little bit about your book, because you just came out with a book recently.
Yes.
And what was the process? You kind of mentioned it before. You started writing it a little bit. You thought you finished it, and you're like, no. Now you're rewriting. You started rewriting it or adding more.
Yes.
So what's it about? What is it?
Love me, know I love you. Okay, it is all of my So when I got into recovery, I don't know. One day I just like 2 months into my recovery, I like sat down at the computer and I just started writing that book. Every day I'd write a page of like 5 poems. I had not written like that. Like I journaled every day for years, and like I wrote stuff here and there, but like I just sat down and just started writing. And I thought that that was done. It was called Continue de mourir les fleurs, which was continue dying and blossom in French. And I sat on it for a while. It was basically done. I thought it was done.
Yeah.
When I sent it to you and I sent it to some friends and I was like, hey, look at this. Thought it was good. And then that's where, I don't know, integration happened. I wrote all these things, and then, I don't know, my integrity, honor, loyalty, those are what I live by, and integrity, or those are what I would hope to live by. Integrity was really important, and I feel like it was a very humbling experience after writing that book, because like the mirror kind of just, I don't know, you write down stuff and then I write down stuff and then I think that it's about someone else, and then over time, like I read it and I'm like, I could say that about me. Like it's all just looking back at myself. So that was like a spiritual experience. So after I wrote that and then relapsed, it took me like, a year and a half to sit back down once I got on the plane and I was like, I have some new things. And I was reading some stuff and I was like, why the fuck would I say that? Like, I sound so childish sometimes. And, and then I also like maintaining like some sort of anonymity.
Mm.
I don't know. They were just, I didn't want to, if someone wanted to call it out and say it was about them, that would be on them. But like, I always wanted to make sure that I didn't say anything too telling.
Yeah.
Anything that was like, because at the end of the day, my writing is for me. Like, I was like hoping that like nobody thought it was like going to be like a tell-all or something,
Yeah.
because it was like, I just want to understand the world and my experiences to the best of my ability, and writing is how I do that. I don't want to throw anyone under the bus. I don't want anyone to feel like they're not safe with me as far as like, like what happens,
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, that book like really just like showed like my shadow side a lot, like, because I am now very much louder about like what I like, who I am and what I follow. And I didn't want people to think that like I was like, oh, I got baptized and I'm saved, and I am just, no, this is a journey.
Yeah.
Like, I've always like tried to play by the rules. Like, I've always like, I don't know, I felt like I could still be honorable and do like hooligan stuff, and I feel like I've done that for the most part. Wanting to stay true to what was going on in the book. So yeah, I think it just took a little bit longer because it sat there, and then I was like, okay, now it's time to like really integrate everything that I've learned and do that healing process so that when it was released, I could like the knowledge turned into wisdom. It's something I feel confident sharing because I know what it means now.
Mm-hmm.
I know what that meant because, like I said, it's like freestyling essentially. You're just like grabbing shit from your subconscious and putting it down with like, and it just like flows, I don't know. It's like freaking magic, and it's really healing for me. So I try to honor the pen and make sure that things are. I want to make sure that when I do speak about something, it's because I've actually experienced it and I grasped the concept before just like spitting it.
For sure. How many pages is the book?
I think it's 60.
60 pages of poems?
Yes, just poems and like some entry stuff. This one was short, and it's mostly a lot of love stuff, but it was just things that I was done. I needed to move on from that project because it's like when you're editing something and constantly looking it over, it's like those feelings over, memories over and over and over again.
No,
I drew it out so long, so I was like,
this is you releasing it.
Yeah, so I was like, okay, that's done. Now I can focus on the next thing, because I mean, there's so much more to write and so much more to share, and I don't want to be stuck on old themes, it's time to let that go.
Yeah. How can people read it or support it?
On my Instagram, Dead Girl Alive with 2 R's, there's a link to my Patreon, and that has the link to my ebook. And then I'll be sharing soon where to get it on my Shopify on the physical copy. So, yeah, I mean, it's not, I think it's some of my best work. I'm really glad I was able to finish that because that's one thing as an artist. Finishing something is...
yes.
It's like once you're just like, you know what? It's done and I did it and it really wasn't as bad as I made it out to be.
No, I've actually found that as like one of the hardest things as well as like finishing a project.
Yes.
Like I had a music video once done and I finished it a year, like I finished editing it a year later. I'm like, well, like that's insanity. But I finished it and it was really relieving.
Yes, it is. So that's definitely just one thing, just finishing things, like being able to say that I'm like getting through school and going to complete that. Like all these things, like just the theme of completion has been very prevalent, and I think that has what has reinforced the self-love, knowing that I am capable of doing something for myself and actually get like happiness and fulfillment from it.
Yeah, I love that. Well, I think that's about it. I feel like we touched on a lot of things.
Yes, we did.
And I really appreciate you just coming all the way to New York and having this conversation with me.
Yes, of course. Thank you so much for having me. This was definitely well needed after that last one. Like, I'm glad that we were able to expand on and
Yeah.
like, thank you.
Yeah, and I'll have all your like social medias and your Patreon in the description.
Awesome. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.